Welcome back, everyone. I'm just a normal guy, says photographer Gabriele Galimberti. I like normal stories, normal people. They are the ones who have the most incredible stories. You can connect to someone who could be you. Given that Gabriele spent nearly 2 years traveling through 58 countries, all while couch surfing, suggests that he has a knack for connecting with just about anyone. From Kanayas in Botswana, a young man training to be an evangelical pastor, to Olena in Ukraine, a committed house nudist, to Catalina in Colombia, with whom he found a few years of love. Gabriele opened his heart and mind to all experiences. And from that time away came 2 books, Couch Surfing and In Her Kitchen, as well as a new outlook. As he wrote, "Every portion of my journey gave me the gift of a little more humanity, curiosity, empathy, the ability to adapt and to listen." Becoming a photographer was not part of the original plan. Gabriele is from nearby Val di Chiana, a place he still considers home and where his family is based. He was supposed to join his father in a surveying business. 3 months later, he knew it wasn't the career for him. In spite of his parents' trepidation, he took the leap, left home, and went to photography school. And there was no looking back. Through the years, he has partnered with his close friend, Paolo Woods. Together, they have produced the award-winning project, The Heavens, about tax havens around the world, as well as numerous stories for National Geographic. Paolo says, "We have a photo marriage. We complement each other. I am more journalistic, while Gabriele works from the heart, the gut." Or, as their mutual friend, journalist Gia Scancarelli told me, Gabriele can absorb the best of the people around him. He sees the worst, but he absorbs the best. He never judges. I can only imagine that his non-judgmental approach to stories made possible his World Press Award-winning project, Ameriguns. But ultimately, it is friends and family who give Gabriele substance. Before he left Couchsurf, he went to visit his Nana. Her concern over who might feed him while he was away led to the book In Her Kitchen, with recipes from grandmothers worldwide. When the book was published, Gabriele went to his Nana and cooked her ravioli recipe for her. When she tasted the meal, she said, "They are better than photos. You can't eat photos." And while that might be true, thankfully, Gabriele can both follow recipes and make astonishing photographs. Please welcome him to the stage.
Thank you. Hello. I have a lot of anxiety talking after the big stars. So I always start my presentation with this picture here, which is a picture that I didn't take because those are my parents and my grandfather looking at them while they are kissing. As you can see in the number, the 64, there's written Rigutino Est. Rigutino is a small place. It's like 500 people maybe living there. Close by, is like 30 minutes away from here. And my parents never left that place. So they are still living 3 kilometers away from that place where my grandfather used to live. And while I was growing up, they were expecting me staying there forever. They were expecting me to find a job that, would keep me there, aging there. But while I was growing up, I had different dreams and different desires. I wanted to be a skateboarder first. Then I wanted to be a musician. And then when I was 18, 20, I decided that I wanted to be a photographer. They were quite happy with that decision because they thought I would open a photography shop in town, take photos of weddings and things like that and never leave home. But instead, I went to a photography school in Florence. I studied photography for a couple of years. And then I fell in love with an American girl that brought me to Texas. So I left home, and in that occasion I was 25, and I simply decided to use what I studied, so photography, to know something more about Texas and the USA. And so I started to photograph things around. I didn't have any, project in mind. I was just using photography to know a new place. To make a long story short, after a few years, I was able to start my career as a documentary photographer. And then I broke up with Dominique, unfortunately. I came back to Italy. I started to work for an Italian magazine called La Repubblica. I was working for the Saturday supplement. And against the desire of my parents, a few months later, I was able to make a trip around the world in 58 countries for almost 2 years. I was doing this for a project that was a weekly column in the magazine. I was actually couch surfing. It means I was staying at people's places for free. There's a website called couchsurfing.org where you can find hospitality for free wherever you go. So my reason why I was traveling so much, it was for this project. I was photographing people, interviewing people. I was actually living with them for a week in each place, and I was kind of reporting what happens at people's places. And that was my first big project. But today I'm showing you something different. I'm not showing you photos from that couchsurfing project. I'm showing something that became my signature style. Because before leaving for this huge trip around the world, a few weeks before, a friend of mine called me and she said, "Can you please take some photos of my daughter?" I went to her place, and her daughter Alessia was organizing her toys while she was playing with cows. So I basically arrived there and I found this picture in front of my eyes. It was already ready. So this little girl suggested me something that became my style. And today I'm showing you how it has developed over the past 10 years. So while I was traveling around the world, I decided to replicate this picture, basically, wherever I was going. And so I took photos of children and toys in every single country. The first one you saw was in Italy, like 30 minutes away from here, and these two are in Texas and China. Every time I photograph kids between 3 and 6, and I ask them to show what their favorite toys are. Here is Haiti, Zanzibar, Australia, Norway, Sweden, Zambia. And each time I also interview these kids and the parents, and I try to write stories to understand more about the relationship these kids have with toys. And there was more photos, but anyway, by now, I think I have more than 100 portraits of kids and toys from maybe 80 different countries. 10 years ago, I made a book called Toy Stories, and now I'm working on the second edition, because this one came out 2014. Next year, after 10 years, I will publish the second edition. I think I will keep taking photos of kids and toys for the rest of my life, so maybe while I will be 80, I will be able to make a book to show how toys and costumes and kids changed over 50 years of travels. Another thing that I've done during that trip is a story that actually my grandmother suggested me. My grandmother was really worried of me going away for 2 years, because that was the first time that I was actually leaving home for such a long period. But my grandmother, so the day that I went to say bye-bye, I'm leaving, to my grandma, she was really, really worried. And I didn't know exactly why, because I was already traveling quite a lot. But after a few minutes, and actually after 1 hour of trying to calm her down, she said, "Okay, but what are you going to eat? Who is going to feed you?" And I said, there are grandmothers everywhere. I promise you I'm going to have dinner with grandmothers. they will feed me. And so I actually did it. And in each place, I used the same visual formula, and I photographed the grandmother with all the fresh ingredients and the final dish. And then I wrote a story about the lady, and I wrote the recipe. She's my grandma, and those are the ravioli that she prepared, as Katie was telling. And again, I did the same thing everywhere. In Thailand, I had this really, really good food. In Armenia, she prepared, I don't remember the name of this food. I also had some weird stuff. In Malawi, those are bugs. And I now have maybe 60, 65 recipes, and 54 of them were collected into a book, which is actually a cookbook. So, and it's my best seller so far. It has been translated in 14 languages. I won several prizes with this book, and I was also invited on TV shows to cook and prepare recipes. And they didn't understand I was a photographer. I'm a photographer. They thought I'm a chef. Anyway, so these are the first two projects that I've done using this formula of taking portraits and things and objects. And that was really suggested by chance from a young little girl. And now I'm showing different stories that I've done with the same style. This is a story that I did for National Geographic. It was published maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I photographed families from 20 different countries, and I asked them to show all the medicines they have at home. This one is in Switzerland, and then I have Miami and Brazil. And the way, through medicines and through these photos, I actually was able to understand a lot about the relationship people have with medicines and health. I took maybe 20 photos. Today I'm showing only 3 or 4. Now I go to another project, which is new, and those are the next 3 photos are something that I did recently. I'm starting a project about waste, plastic waste, and this time I'm trying to show numbers and statistics. For example, here I asked 2 people to collect plastic for 2 hours in 200 meters of beach. And this is what they found. 2 hours, 2 people, 200 meters. And this one is in Abruzzo, here in Italy. Here it's 3 people, 3 hours, 300 meters in Campania, pretty close to Naples. And here instead is another thing. Those are cigarettes. I don't know how to say that in English. What left, when you smoke a cigarette and you throw, what's the word? Thank you. Here it's 20 people collecting cigarettes for 1 day in Genova. And this is what they found. Cigarettes are the second trash found on seas, at least here in Italy. This is what the statistic says. But I don't only photograph people and objects in this formula, this visual formula. I do many other things. And one story that I made for National Geographic a few years ago is a story about private collectors of dinosaurs. So I proposed the story to the magazine. They loved it, and I followed a dinosaur buyer through his journey, finding dinosaurs, rebuilding them, and then selling to the private market on auctions. While I was making this story, one day I was in Kansas, waiting between an appointment and another, so I had a few days off, and I was quite bored. I was there was nothing to do, it was November, and so one day I said, I took my car, I was renting a car, and I said, I can drive outside of Kansas City and see what I found there. And so driving out of the city, at a certain moment, I was in the middle of nowhere, and I found this huge gun shop. So in that moment, I realized that after 20 years of travels in the USA, I've never understood the relationship between people and guns in America. And so I decided to enter in this gun shop and try to understand more. I went inside and I discovered something that shocked me. They don't only sell guns, as I was expecting. They sell any kind of weapons, including bazookas. So I spoke with one of the customers. He was pretty confident to me, and he was curious about me as an Italian being there. And so we started like a conversation, and he was there buying a firearm. And I said, "Is this the first one you buy?" He looked at me really weird and said, "Of course not. I have more than 60 at home." And I said, "Can I come and see your collection? Can I come and take a picture of you?" And he said, "Okay, come over." And 1 hour later, this is what happened. Is Robert. He's 46 from Kansas. And this is the first picture that I took for my latest project called The Americans. So when I took this photo, as I told like a minute ago, I was not planning to make a project. I simply found a person that opened the door to me and let me take a picture of him with his gun. But a couple of days later, I was driving from Kansas to Texas. And so I started to think about this photo, and I asked myself, but the person I photographed 2 days ago is like a crazy guy who likes to collect guns, or these kind of situations are common in the USA. So I applied the same way of working. I went to a gun shop in Dallas. I spoke with some of the customers, and an hour later, I took this picture here. I was with Katie. She's around 40, and she has 40 plus rifles and guns. And so at that moment, I had 2 photos taken, and I said, okay, let me understand more. I went to my hotel, I made a little research on Google, something that everybody of you can do quickly, and I found out numbers that shocked me. The first one is that in the USA, there are more guns than people. Only counting private use guns is more than 400 millions. But Americans are 330 millions, more or less. So it's 1.3 per person. And another number that shocked me is that almost 50% of private use guns are in the USA, but the Americans are 4% of the global population. So these numbers are really, not really balanced. And I said, okay, I want to try and take more photos because I feel like my photos are, of course, portraits and they tell stories of these people, but they're showing numbers. So my photos are somehow infographic. And a couple of months later, I was in Washington, D.C., because I was there delivering my project on dinosaurs. And at the end of my presentation, I showed to my editors these 2 photos, and I said, by the way, I'm starting a new project on guns. If you want to help me, I'm happy. So National Geographic gave me a hand, and we started this journey together. And I made a project all across the USA, photographing 45 people and families from 35 different states, and I simply asked, can you show me the guns you have at home? Here we are in Louisiana. And this guy, he introduced himself at the door saying, "I'm Black Rambo, nice to meet you." He's a gun influencer. He has more than 1 million of followers on Instagram, and he doesn't work for the gun industry, but the gun industry gives him free guns to be an influencer on Instagram. The same thing here in California. This couple, they are influencers as well, but they are targeting a completely different market because Black Rambo is, talking to the southern community, is in Louisiana, is a rapper. This couple here, they are super fit, they go running on the beach, they have healthy food, but always together with a gun. So they are targeting a different market. And then I went back to Texas. And this family started to bring out firearms, and after 8 hours, that's the time I needed to take this picture, I needed to say, "Okay guys, stop it, because there's no space left for guns." And the caption of this picture says that this is part of the guns they have. It's not the total amount. They are in Austin, Texas. And the parents were really proud to tell me that their son, is 11, is having his own guns in his hand. He built it himself. Here is in Florida, in Tampa, and one thing that shocked me when I was taking this picture is that, as you can see, we are outside of the house. On the back of me, I was standing at the edge of the garden, and the street is actually behind me, and there were cars and bicycles and people going all the time. And I was there for maybe 2 hours, and in these 2 hours, the police came twice, back and forth, and they didn't stop. They didn't ask anything. So I was shocked. I said, we are here with rifles and guns, and they didn't even stop to say, what are you doing? So it's completely normal to see maybe somebody with a gun in the garden. Here we are in Alabama. He's a single father, and he has 2 kids. One is 6 years old, the other one is 3 years old. The oldest one has already used a gun. And the father was really proud to tell me the story of this little kid using one gun. And he said, "My youngest is still too young, but maybe next year I'm going to teach him how to use it." Here in Arizona, she's 16. She's standing in the middle of a room which is completely dedicated to guns. And to enter this room, there's, you have to do these little tricks like in the James Bond movies. You have to move one book, turn the candle, and then the bookshelves turns around and you can enter the room. She's 16, so she cannot own guns, but her father made a document with a lawyer which says that by the age of 18, she's going to be the owner of everything. Here in Nevada, Las Vegas, I think the time is running, so I cannot tell you all the stories, but yeah, I can go a bit faster. So, Nevada, Las Vegas, here is in Indiana. He is the pastor of the church behind him. And he has a YouTube channel where every day he speaks about Jesus and guns. It's alternative. Like one day Jesus, one day guns. And he combines these two, what's the word? Faith in one way of living. I don't know how he uses guns for teaching things about Jesus, but he says he does. Again in Indiana, so 2 photos taken in the same state. She's again a gun influencer. Here, instead, we are in Missouri, and she's the only one that told me she used a gun against somebody. She actually killed a person. She's a guard in a discotheque, and one night two guys were fighting. One of the two took off a gun, and she saw him, and she killed him. And so among 45 people, she's the only one that actually told me in the interview I used a gun against somebody. This picture here is again something that shocked me a bit, because I took this photo in San Francisco, in Castro, the neighborhood in the center of San Francisco. This guy here works at Google, is one of the top managers of Google. He's a musician, he's gay, married with a man. He has an electric car, he traveled the world. He was part of the election team of Obama and then Hillary Clinton, but he's a gun enthusiast. So while I was doing this project, I discovered that few of the bias that I had are not true. I was thinking, maybe I'm going to find guns only in Texas and Arizona. Maybe I'm going to find only Republicans, but it's not true. As you can see, I photographed people from, San Francisco, Texas, New York, Boston, Hawaii. I photographed Asian, white, black, Latinos, girls, boys, families, rich and poor. So it's really everywhere. Like here in Pennsylvania, like a few miles away from Philadelphia, Hawaii, Honolulu. So when I went there, I was expecting to go surfing, but instead they brought me to shoot guns at the shooting range. Kansas again, an happy family with 2 dogs. And here is the last picture of my presentation. This is South Carolina. This is the cover of the book. And here I had fun, let's say I had fun, drawing the border of the United States using 119 guns that this guy has at home. Thank you very much.